Bonjour. We're happy to welcome you on an imperial journey on Rendez-vous with Yasmin
and Kumar. It's also a historical journey taking you back to the 19th century.
and the days of the Second French Empire of Napoleon III. And then we go back to 1908 to trace the imperial journey of Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III, to Ceylon,
where she stayed right here at the Galle Face Hotel. Let's begin with a brief history of Emperor Napoleon III and the Second Empire. A nephew of Napoleon I or Napoleon Bonaparte, Louis Napoleon or Napoleon III was the first president of France from 1848 to 1852 and the Emperor of France from 1852 to 1870. Napoleon III seized power in France from the short-lived Second Republic after the Revolution of 1848 in France.
We are right here at the Empress Suite of the Galle Face Hotel, where way back in 1908, Empress Eugenie stayed.
Bonjour, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Ça nous fait grand plaisir de vous accueillir de nouveau dans notre émission Rendez-vous. Et nous sommes dans la suite de l'impératrice Eugénie où elle a séjourné lors de son passage à Colombo en 1908.
Merci Yasmin. D'abord, merci pour cette invitation dans un lieu historique et aussi d'avoir le plaisir de discuter avec vous d'un moment intéressant de l'histoire de France et de l'histoire de l'Europe, voire même du monde pour certains épisodes.
Les historiens ont généralement jugé durement la politique étrangère de Napoléon III. À l'inverse, sa politique intérieure a été mieux perçue. Pouvez-vous nous éclairer sur cette période?
Ce que vous dites, effectivement, le jugement des historiens est partagé et a été partagé sur la période de Napoléon III. Il faut bien voir que d'abord sa politique étrangère qui a été surtout entachée par la fin de la période, d'abord par le malheureux épisode de la guerre du Mexique, et puis aussi à la fin par la défaite contre la Prusse, n'avait pas été aussi durement jugée, notamment à la suite de la campagne d'Italie qui avait amené à la création du royaume d'Italie. Et donc, il y a une vision qui est assez partagée de l'empereur Napoléon III. Par ailleurs, sur sa politique intérieure, qui un peu à l'inverse a été jugée durement au début, notamment après le coup d'État, une répression assez importante, et on est passé graduellement d'un empire qu'on appelle traditionnellement autoritaire à un empire plus libéral sur les 10 dernières années du régime. Mais surtout, ce qui est important, c'est que cette période du Second Empire est une période de grand développement, développement industriel, développement des transports, poursuite de l'industrialisation de la France, et donc une période de grands changements et de grande modernisation que tout le monde finalement a apprécié, puisque c'était aussi l'occasion d'une plus grande richesse pour un grand nombre de gens. Donc ces deux visions sont à la fois vraies, mais ne recouvrent pas tout ce qu'a été le Second Empire dans l'histoire de France. Et bon, évidemment, il finit mal pour l'Empire et mal pour l'idée monarchique en France, mais cela permet de commencer une nouvelle étape qui est l'étape républicaine qui se poursuit encore.
Napoleon III was given great credit for the rebuilding of Paris during his reign. And joining us now on Rendez-vous is senior architect Ranjith Alahakoon. Ranjith, share with us your point of view of this great rebuilding of Paris under Napoleon.
Yes, it was Hausmann, the designer and planner, who's responsible for all this, and he was given free rein to do what he had to do. So earlier Paris was built round squares, and all the activity was in the arcades and the tree-lined arcades, which were very beautiful, Place Royal and all those places. But they became run down, and not only obsolete, they became, terrible things started happening there in the arcades, antisocial activities. But when Hausmann was asked to redo it, he did it with avenues, long boulevards, and sometimes they even went underground when they had to cross, and they built beautiful facades and tree-lined, and everyone was able to gather around them, and they became extremely popular, which the emphasis around the squares moved to the avenues after that. So then we know it with Paris, as we know now, is all the boulevards. Now it continues even when they were building for the 200 years.
The Grand Arch
and now
of
the
La
Grand
Défense.
Arch at the end of that. So the avenues continue.
The line continued, yes.
Yes. Much more than, so it is, Paris is decidedly one of the most beautiful capital cities, maybe the only one, the most beautiful, I mean. And this is what we experience now.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Back on Rendezvous, the focus now falls on Napoleon III's wife, Empress Eugenie.
Known as Eugenie de Montijo, she was born in Granada, Andalusia, Spain, into the aristocratic and historic house of Guzman. She was formally educated mostly in Paris, and in 1853 married Charles-Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the Second French Empire.
She produced an heir for the emperor in 1856, their only son, Eugène Louis Jean Joseph. Known as Eugenie, the Empress of the French, she was a woman of power and independence of the 19th century.
She was a figure that stood out, the royal protector of the poor, of women and of artists. She was also an expert in fashion and high society. After the defeat during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and after the fall of the Second Empire, the royal family fled to Camden Place in Chislehurst in southeast London in the UK. And following the death in 1873 of her husband, Napoleon III, and that of her son, the Prince Imperial, in 1879, the Empress Eugenie eventually settled down in Farnborough in Hampshire. As a widow, she became a great friend of Queen Victoria.
Her dream was to travel to Ceylon and India. Towards the end of 1907, Sir Thomas Lipton received a message from the Secretary of Her Majesty, Empress Eugenie of France.
The Empress would like you to arrange for her to go to Ceylon. You praised the beauties of the island so enthusiastically to Her Majesty when you were last here that nothing will dissuade her from going. She has set her heart on the trip and wants you as a feather to make all arrangements as soon as you can. Her wish was fulfilled when she came to Ceylon as a guest of Sir Thomas Lipton, and she was more than 80 years of age. On the 25th of January 1908, the P&O liner Moulton, carrying the royal party, arrived in Colombo from Marseille in France. The royal guests were given a rousing welcome, as it happened to be the first visit to Ceylon of a personage of such historical importance. Sir Thomas Lipton was the first to go on board to welcome the royal visitor.
The royal party was accommodated in special apartments
Right here at the Galle Face Hotel. Well, here we are in the boudoir where Empress Eugenie slept at the Galle Face Hotel. Yasmin, how many years ago was that?
almost 115 years ago. And apart from being entertained to lunches and dinners among distinguished guests, the then governor of Ceylon, Sir Henry Edward McCallum, accompanied the ex-Empress Eugenie on a visit to Mount Lavinia Hotel.
The Empress then visited Kandy, passing through picturesque scenery while travelling on the Viceroy train from Colombo.
Eugenie de Montijo, l'impératrice, qui était une femme très, très forte, dont on le savait, plus jeune, a dépassé ce moment de tristesse, de difficulté, pour ensuite avoir une vie, être quelqu'un qui était salué dans les grandes cours d'Europe, et même, Proust parle d'elle dans ses livres. Donc c'est une femme qu'on avait toujours dit audacieuse, téméraire, et la démonstration, c'est qu'à plus de 80 ans, elle vient ici, qui est très loin quand même de son lieu d'exil, elle vient ici à Ceylon pour une période assez longue, cette semaine, et pour visiter aussi le pays, aller jusqu'à Kandy, etc. Donc voilà, c'est un monde, la rencontre de ces monarchies d'Europe avec l'île de Ceylon.
Merci, merci de votre présence et merci de votre soutien.
Merci Yasmin, merci Kumar, et c'est toujours un plaisir de participer à Rendez-vous.
In the absence of the governor of Kandy, his office assistant Leonard Woolf, better known as the husband of the famous writer Virginia Woolf, welcomed the Empress and accompanied her to the King's Pavilion, where she was to stay during her stay in Kandy. Leonard Woolf, in his growing autobiography of the years 1904 to 11, says that the Empress invited Woolf to tea.
Actually, she mistook him for the governor when she invited him for tea.
And would you believe, in typical English wit, he actually said he was put off by her bearing and her regal retinue, and lightly mocked at the self-important manner of an ex-empress meeting a mistaken government agent.
He then arranged for the Empress to visit the Dalada Maligawa.
Her Imperial Highness had heard of the tooth of the Lord Buddha, which was sometimes shown to the people, and she had a great desire to see it. The relic is now shown every August at the great festival of the Dalada Perahera in Kandy.
The visit of the ex-Empress of France to Ceylon is a great compliment to the island.
And in her own words, it had been one of the most delightful holidays she had ever spent. Hope you enjoyed our imperial journey.
Until our next rendezvous, it's au revoir.